Just hours ago, the Baltimore Sun published what it is calling the first details from Freddie Gray's autopsy report, revealing that the medical examiner concluded this death was a medical and legal accident and only ruled it a homicide because she was told the police failed to belt Freddie Gray into that police van. Key findings include the conclusion that Gray suffered a significant high-impact injury inside the police van. But the report is riddled with suppositions and guesses, and there are real questions about whether this can serve as the basis for a murder charge. In addition, and this is significant, there are now angry press releases from both the state's attorney's office and the defense attorneys over who leaked these details to the Sun and why. The Sun does not publish the autopsy report. They say that they have spoken with sources who have seen the report and have the information. The only people who we know have it are the state's attorney and the medical examiner. The state's attorney is denying it was their office. So they're suggesting perhaps, I guess, the medical examiner's office spoke with somebody. Why are there so many suppositions in it? You tell me whether this is normal, because I went through it and I just want to show the audience, okay? The medical examiner surmised that he, meaning Freddie Gray, may have gotten to his feet. Then she goes on. It's possible Gray was hurt while lying on the floor. His body likely couldn't have moved into that position. Gray's most significant injury most likely occurred after the second and before the fourth stops. Possibly, though, before the third. The medical examiner surmised that Gray could have gotten to his feet, and on she goes. Is this unusual?
Yes, it's unusual because the medical examiner is concerned about the autopsy findings. What did the spine bones look like in the neck? What did the spinal cord look like? But more important than that, the autopsy has to be fully released so that we're not looking at somebody's spin on it. But also, it doesn't stand by itself. Freddie Gray was in the hospital for 7 days. They did a lot of work on him at the hospital.
That's a good point. The autopsy, you know, in these murder cases is typically all you have. Here they had a live patient in the hospital for days, and that is not mentioned anywhere. But
if they can prove that the driver slammed on his brakes intentionally, knowing that this guy was in a very, very vulnerable position. We all agree that he was on his belly, hands behind his back, and that's on them. That is a problem the officers are going to have to answer for. But unless there's some type of intentional slamming on the brakes to then recklessly disregard his life, then you don't get.
Go ahead, Dr. Brown. I can see Dr. Brown wants to get.
Megan, if I just want to say one thing, what we're doing is reacting to the newspaper spin. We have to see the facts, the autopsy as was written, and all of the hospital records that permits interpretation of the autopsy.
But Dr. Bodden, there's not going to be anything in the autopsy that conclusively says this is when the injury took place. I mean, you know that's not going to happen. What the autopsy seems to be saying, at least the reports of it are, they don't believe that the injury happened outside the van.
Yeah,
they believe it was
based on the autopsy.
Okay, go ahead.
That's based on speculations as to what might have happened. It's very unusual to get this kind of injury from that kind of a deceleration, period. Now, maybe it could happen, but there are very few cases like this where somebody gets a fatal cervical spine injury from deceleration in the back of a van. And
what do you make of the fact, Dr. Bodden, that in the report they're talking about the fact that Freddie Gray was supposedly on his knees. He was on his knees after the alleged injury. He was on his knees, slumped over on a bench. Could that be possible with a spine injury?
Yes, of course it could be. We have all kinds of people who have spine injuries, who are in wheelchairs, who do things, who can move their arms, can move their legs partially. It depends on what the actual spinal cord showed at the time of autopsy, and more important, what it showed when it was examined while he was alive on the first day that he comes into the hospital. I got to go, but I have to ask you. I got to ask the lawyers about this Vogue article on Marilyn Mosby, the prosecutor in this case. Annie Leibovitz does the photo shoot. Marilyn Mosby comes out and says she doesn't regret one word she said when she stood before the public and said, I hear your calls for no justice, no peace. This is our moment, and so on. Doesn't regret one word as she does a Vogue photo shoot. And I ask you guys, Arthur and then Mark, quickly, is this appropriate?
Absolutely. Not the way I was raised. Not as a prosecutor. The prosecutors I worked for, I mean, it's as opposite. She's doing the absolute opposite. You're supposed to be as professional as you possibly can. A shoot in Vogue magazine is not prosecutorial.
Mark, quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like her number one agenda is to seek the truth, and that is a concern of everybody.
It's not time to be, it's not your moment in the sun. Wait until the case is over, at least.
Correct.
And you got the freedom of 6 people, 6 cops on the line.